This tutorial is sponsored by Videoblocks. Hey, what's up guys, Chris Connor here and welcome to another Creatrix Visuals tutorial. Today we're gonna kick things down a bit and go a bit simpler this time, and we're gonna take a look at how you can incorporate a lot of VFX elements with your scene and some specific techniques that you need to keep in mind all the time to create something really cinematic and awesome. With that said, let's take a look at the clip. Pretty cool. As you guys can see, we have a couple things going on with the smoke, the meteors, the overlay particles, and we're just gonna take a look at how to create all of this today step by step. But before we get started, a quick thanks over to the awesome people at Videoblocks which made this tutorial possible. Now, you guys know Videoblocks, they have been amazing supporting this channel and bringing tutorials to you guys, and you haven't checked them out, I really urge you to do so, as they have some of the best video clips around, from After Effects to motion backgrounds to anything you might need. So I really urge you to go check them out guys, because you never know what you might need, and especially if you're someone new that, for example, wants to really dive into color grading, for example, let's say, but you don't have the best camera or the capability of going out there and getting amazing clips, Videoblocks is the place for you, because you can go type in a keyword like, let's say I did mountain aerial, for example, like I did for this one, and actually this clip is from Videoblocks, and get a ton of results and start working in your craft and really improving your skills with what you want to do guys. So Videoblocks guys, they're awesome, all of their videos are royalty free, and you can go there today and start a 7-day free trial guys. I mean, that's awesome. For free you get 7 days of Videoblocks access to get and download any videos that you want and really get to know their service. So I really urge you guys to do this. I know I've talked about them a ton in this channel, so link will be in the description guys, head over there. And with that said, fire up After Effects and let's get started. Okay guys, so as you can see within After Effects I have my composition with my VFX comp and the overall grade that I did on top of it. And just a quick note guys, when you do VFX work, I usually do the overall color grade after all the VFX have been incorporated, but I do have some effects that basically have to do more with like light in general, like lightsabers or lightning. Those I tend to do the grade before I implement those light effects. So just a quick note, and this I'm working on a cool Creatrix cinematic LUTs pack, and this is what this is from, but I just want to show you guys. This is my composition with all my VFX, and I just put the grade on top and it's done. Looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna move on to the VFX composition so we can get started. So as you can see here guys, we have a couple of things going on, but when we start breaking them down step by step, you will see that is a very straightforward and relatively easy thing to achieve within After Effects. So I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna isolate my footage, which again we got from Videoblocks. As you can see, pretty straightforward, awesome cinematic looking scene with a cool pan with a drone shot. So here's what I want to start work on. When you have a scene and you want to incorporate visual assets on it, you need to start looking. The first thing is start looking, where do you want those VFX to be incorporated in your footage, and what tracking points you can use to achieve a tracking solve in order for you to be able to link those assets into your scene and basically make them stick to what you have. So first thing I always do is look for points of tracking that I can use that later can be linked to anything visual effects wise that I throw in the footage. So If I go to effects control, you can see I have a 3D camera track. Now if I hit select my footage and I hit right click and select track camera, After Effects will automatically start this 3D camera tracker, and it will start tracking your scene basically. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and this is one of those times that it really doesn't work as well, because as you can see I've already gone through the analyze, and as we can see it really just tracked the foreground, and we have no data in depends of the mountains or the sky or right way into the scene basically. So and there you can fiddle around with the settings etc, but in this case it was not worth it going through the traffic, because there is a simpler way to do things than complicate them. So as you can see, this is a very straightforward, very fluid camera motion. So beauty track will work as well, and it actually is going to be simple to give us the same awesome results. So here is what I'm going to do. As you can see here guys, I've already done a couple of things. So I'm gonna open up this null over here, and as you can see this is what I'm going to show you guys how to do. As you can see we already have a null object that is perfectly gripped, let's say, to the scene, and it follows that specific point perfectly with no problem. So here's how you do this. You select your clip and you hit right click and you select track motion, okay, and then After Effects is going to do its thing. And you get this point where you can position it wherever you want in the scene, and After Effects is gonna try and track whatever is inside this thing. But there's a trick. If you go over here to your tracker and you select rotation, then you get 2 points. And the first point is used to really define the area that you want to track, and the point in the scene that you tell After Effects, hey, this is where I want my null object to be glued on. And the second track point calculates rotation data. So in this case it's gonna work great. So what I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna scroll through, and another thing you need to be aware of is both tracking points need to be in the scene for the entire duration of the video. Because let's say I want to track this tree, after a couple of seconds it's gone, so After Effects has nothing to track. So this technique only works when you have the tracking points that they both are already in the scene and they don't get lost. Now in a previous tutorial, the Fallen Soldier VFX tutorial that I did back in the day, shows you another way that you can combine multiple points. So even though this tree is gonna go away, you're gonna tell After Effects, when this tree goes off I want you to track this tree, and then you can combine the two trackings, and whatever you throw in your scene is still gonna stick in, which was pretty cool. So go check it out. But for this one we don't really need to worry about this because we have enough cool tracking points to track. So what I did is I selected this point right there and I resized my tracking point, and then I selected one of those cool little white snow looking things. And because for After Effects it's way easier when you select things that have high contrast and don't really get lost with other things, and that's the way After Effects does the best job in terms of analyzing and tracking data. So once I select my 2 points and I made sure that they are within the scene for the entire duration, I simply select track forward, or in this case track backwards, and After Effects is gonna do its thing, it's gonna track, it's gonna be good. And then I would go to layer, new, null object, and once I have my null object, which I already have right here, as you guys can see, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna select edit target, and I'm gonna select that null, and then I'll press OK and apply, and I'm done. So if we go back, now you can see we have this null object, and if I press P for position, you can see all those tracking data. And I'm really stressing this because tracking is essential for anything VFX wise you do within After Effects in order to make it look real. Okay, so with that said, now we have a null object, and as you can see we have actually two null objects, because one is for the sky, for the meteors, and one is for the smoke effect thing that you guys saw. So let me put this on fit. Awesome. So now because we have our tracks, we are ready to implement any VFX that we want, link them to those tracks and start making them look awesome. So as you can see guys, if I go to my assets folder here, I have a couple of things. I have the meteors, I have the large scale smoke, I have some fog, and I have some cinematic particles, and those things can be found in the Creatrix store guys, so I really highly recommend you go over to see and take a look. You never know what you can find. So I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna start with the biggest thing in the scene that has the most impact, and that is the smoke. So if we open up the smoke right now, you can see I brought in my clip, and here's some cool things that you do with VFX to really make them look like they're part of the scene. As you guys saw in the preview, this is a slow motion kind of pan, right? Like it's not real time. So when I first brought in my smoke thing, which I'm gonna do right now, this one. So I'm gonna bring in the smoke again, and as you can see, we don't really have much. So this is the smoke. It's basically the same thing, right? But as you can see, it doesn't really look the same, and it is way faster. So a cool way to make things look like the same is to actually match the speed the effect has as the speed of the clip. For example, this one is very slow. So what I need to do is match the speed, the asset, with the speed of the clip. So in order to do that, I do right click, time stretch, and if it's quicker, I need to bring this value down. For example, let's say I'll make it 80%, so it becomes 20% faster. But in this case, we need to slow it way down, right? So I already did this, guys, so I'm gonna just hit a delete right here, and I'm gonna go to my actual asset that is already incorporated. I'm gonna go time and time stretch. And I'm just showing you this, guys, because it really depends on your footage and your scene. So for this specific scene, right, this specific clip, 750 times up from 100% speed. Like this clip has been slowed down to its limit, basically, right? So the value of 750 really fits this scene and how the smoke would move in that slow down version. But we do not stop there. So 750, of course, like I said, this is a trial and error. You might want 500 or you might want quicker, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? So once you put this value there, you press OK, it's gonna be very choppy. So what you need to do is actually tell After Effects that, hey, this clip has been slowed down, and what I want you to do is start blending frames together so that its motion is way smoother. So let me actually isolate the smoke. So what you do is you hit right click and you go to frame blending. And as you can see, I've selected pixel motion. Now, sometimes frame mix works, sometimes pixel motion works. I would tell you guys first go for pixel motion, and if it doesn't work, you go back to frame mix, and if that doesn't work, well, you've slowed down the clip way too much that After Effects does not have enough frames to make it look smooth, basically. So I select pixel motion, but even when you select pixel motion, if you don't go up here and you select this, you see, if I just leave the cursor there, it says enables frame blending of all layers, blah blah blah, cool. So only once you select this, After Effects is actually gonna do the frame blending action that we told it to do before. So if I actually put this on half, let's see if we can preview this. So as you can see, obviously it has the null data, that's why it's moving in the background, but it looks fairly okay, right? So let's give it a second here. Come on. Cool. So as you can see, it's relatively smooth, right? Like the smoke looks as if it moves in slow motion. Now, look what happens when I remove this. Cool. Let's preview it again. Look how you can already see it's already done. Look how choppy the smoke looks. Like it looks fake, right? And that's because we haven't done the frame blending thing and told After Effects, hey, try to somehow combine frames and make it look smooth. So as you can see, guys, huge difference, and that's how you do that. Pretty cool. I'm pretty sure some of you guys already knew this, but I still think it's cool for the people that don't. So here's the thing now. Let me isolate the things that I've isolated before, which is this one. So as you can see, guys, we're pretty cool. The asset fits perfectly in the scene, and its speed, it's matched to the speed of the footage, but that's not enough to make something look realistic. The second thing is, when you have assets in a scene, it's cool to have foreground objects that force that asset to be behind, because that tells the audience that really, ooh, that smoke is behind that something, so it looks so real, and it's not just an overlay layer on top of something, you know. So in this case, we obviously didn't have much to work with, but it still went out of my way to position the smoke behind this little hill, whatever you want to call it. So even at that point, let me see, it's behind it, and even that small detail really goes a long way into making something look as if it fits. Because let's see, if I just isolate this, you can see we have this cool hill, and smoke would be behind it if it was coming out of this way, right? So this is what we did. Isolate the smoke, and this is how you do the smoke, right? You create a new solid. Layer, new, solid. That's all you have to do. Let's see right now. Okay, maybe black, super. Okay, and After Effects will just create a black thing. Now, we don't want that. What we want to do is take our paint and we're going to draw exactly the shape that we want that black object, that black solid to take, right? So let's say that's the heel, cool. So when I open it, that thing is black. Now, here's the cool thing, guys. So I already did it, so let's open this one. So I have a mask with a solid that's black and it represents the heel. I'm gonna link this to the null object, so that black solid is tracked to the scene and it follows that heel. But then what I'm gonna do, then I'm gonna tell After Effects to take the VFX asset, which is the smoke, and alpha invert the layer above it. And what do we set above our smoke layer? That black solid. So once you select this, you tell After Effects, hey, I want the smoke to be visible everywhere except that black part of the layer above it. Because if we want it to only show within the black, we would select alpha matte. But we don't want the black and want After Effects to take everything except the black. So we put alpha inverted. And now After Effects tells the cool preview that the smoke that goes behind that black thing should not be visible. And of course what you do is you press F on the black solid and you just feather it slightly, just slightly, so it doesn't have a very rough edge. So if I put this to 0, you can see how it becomes kind of rough. To 5, it's very nicely blended together. And again, that value really depends on how far something is or the resolution of your video clip. So play around with that too. So now we're pretty good. We're doing awesome. We have the smoke, goes behind the hill, it's perfectly tracked, and the timing is awesome. So what do we do next? Now, another cool technique that many people forget to do is that elements must technically interact with the environment and at least shadow-wise, right? So this smoke, even though I rotated, flipped it horizontally to make it match with, as you can see, the trees here, this is where the shadow is. So this smoke, the shadow part should be in that direction as well. So if I had it flipped over, it wouldn't really, something would be off because the shadow all of a sudden is this way, where in this one's is that way. So first, what you need to do, for example, in this case with a smoke asset, is put the shadow part where the shadow of your actual real things is oriented at. And once you do that, you need to go further and actually put an interactive shadow that this smoke would create to the footage. For example, this smoke, if light comes this way, right, like as my mouse cursor goes, it would cast a shadow right here, but it will not just be a static shadow, it will be an animated shadow, just like the smoke is, right? So here's what you do, guys. It's pretty cool. So what you do is you duplicate the smoke layer, right? So as you can see here, we have 2 smoke layers and it's duplicated. I'm gonna open it so we can see what we do. And as you can see, it's very slightly, but once you see, you can never go back. So off, look right here, guys, and on. We have a very soft shadow that the smoke casts in the mountain and in here, right? So here's how you do this. You duplicate your layer, your asset layer, and you go to effects, and you go to curves. And as you can see, I'm in the art. Let me reset this for a second. This is how it looks. So I'm gonna go to and implement a curves adjustment. And I'm gonna drop everything down so the layer basically becomes extremely dark. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna play around so till I get the shadow looking like a shadow, if that makes any sense. And once that's done, I'm gonna go, as you can see, look how rough it is. I'm gonna go to effects, blur and sharpen, and I'm gonna incorporate a blur effect so I make the shadow very soft basically and not harsh. So I'm gonna select Gaussian blur as I've been before, and again I'm gonna play with this value until I get something that I'm happy about. For example, here 50, a 50 value of blurriness looks pretty good to me. So that's what I put. And as you can see now, when I play it back and forth, that shadow is animated for one. It fits the scene and the direction of the light that exists in the scene, and it's dragged and it looks great. So that smoke actually interacts. And again, it's just playing with position. Obviously, you're gonna have it below the other smoke layer because it's on top because it really makes sense why you shadow, you know. So always make sure that the way you stack up your layers makes sense and everything is really good. So here's what we got, guys. Pretty cool, right? Now another thing that you can do with assets in general is color correct them, not color grade them, color correct them to match the scene. So I just turned off my color correction for the smoke, and this is how it looks right from out the bat when I put the asset on my clip, which honestly in this case is not that bad, but in other cases it just looks awful, like it's just bad. So what you need to do is color grade it so that it matches the scene way better, and this is usually very simple. For example, here we have a smoke asset. Okay, cool. We basically need to play with the red tones and red, blue, green tones in general to try and match it basically with the ground, I would say, because that's where the smoke generates from, right? So what I did is I went and I put a curves adjustment. So first thing I did, I went to the RGB level and I increased it a bit, so I made the smoke a bit lighter in exposure basically. And then I went to the red value, leave it the same, green value, reduce it just a bit, so I increased those magenta tones just a touch, and then I went to the blue one and dropped it down so it becomes a bit more yellowish. As you can see, we have those really reddish yellowish tones. And I'm going kind of fast in this because there's really no point. This color correction only works for this specific scene and not the scene that you're probably gonna work with. But I want you guys to know the tools that you can use to color correct something to make it look better, basically. So then I put a sharpening filter just to sharpen things up a bit, because this I actually had to downscale the clip from 4K to 1080 because it was just too crisp, and it's still way crispier than the asset. So I just put some sharpening app and we're good to go. Okay guys, so we're getting there. Now we have a smoke and everything looks pretty cool, but the sky, I would like why is there smoke? So I thought, well, maybe there was a very small fragment of a meteor that went down and created a boom, and then there's the aftermath smoke or something. So I thought, okay, cool. So let's put some cool meteors in the sky, which was very simple. Okay, I have my meteor assets, which those ones actually, let me isolate them so you guys can see. These actually are relatively easy to make, and you can make it within After Effects. And basically it's like Trapcode Particular, which is a plugin, and then you do a couple of things with glows and they're done. I might show you guys how to do it in another tutorial, but it's fairly simple, as you guys can see. And because it's so far away in the sky, you cannot really tell, oh, that's such a low res meteor, you know? So cool. So what I did here, I have my second null object, and for that one I tracked the sky, which was one of the tip of the mountains and one of those very well defined clouds. And we have another track like we showed before. And so I brought in my meteors, changed them to screen because it just looks better when you have something and the background is sky. It usually looks good if you put it in screen. Let's go between screen and normal. As you guys can see, this is normal, this is screen. Yeah, I think it looks a bit better. And this one was really easy actually. I just dropped it in, position it in the position that I wanted it to be on the sky in terms of scale and position, of course. I linked it to the null, and that was it. Once again, I had to do had to play with time and really make it match with the footage. And as you can see, this one, guys, is 3 times slower than its original speed, right? And again, it goes to show you, you really need to play around with settings to make things fit together. And that was it. I had nothing to do. It was super quick and looked super good from the get-go. So now I have 2 more things, extra things that I did. Why is this one on? 2 extra things that I did, and that was to incorporate a bit of cinematic particles to kind of simulate a very light amount of snow, because we have the snow here and some snow there. And what you do when you put a general overlay on top everything, including your footage and assets that you've already incorporated, is you make it harder for the audience to say that looks so fake, because everything interacts together so good. So for example, I have my one of the cinematic particles sample from the cinematic particles pack in the Creatrix store. If I open this up and isolate it, you can see it's this very light type of snow that just swirls around and looks pretty cool. And it's not those big chunks that look fake. It's very nice and refined. So I just enjoyed it. It looks good and it looks great. I don't need to do anything. And now we have the footage, the smoke, and then we have particles and everything that makes it look pretty good. And another thing that I did that I chose honestly to watch, I went and got my fog, one of my fog assets, and I just spread it in because we have this overall depth in the air basically, because again, like, it's a mountain scene, there's snow, it's supposed to be cold, and I just dropped it in again. And you know, you can play with opacity, etc. For example, this one I had to put it down to 50% because it was just too high at 100%. This is 100%, so I put it down to 50 and everything was pretty good. And again, I didn't really have to do anything because those assets are very dynamic, that they don't really need to be tracked in the scene or in this specific scene. Some other things it might need to be tracked. So this is what I do, and those 2 last things were just something extra, you know, going the extra mile to testing some things and making sure that your scene looks really awesome. So this is what I did, and at the end, what I was seeing is it looks very fade out with all the assets, but I knew that once I put on the color grade, everything will come back and become very vivid, basically. So this is it pretty much. As you guys can see, very straightforward. Now what I really need you to remember is, first of all, tracking is king. You cannot put anything in a clip without very good track, basically. And here we saw a simple way to incorporate a simple 2D tracking motion where it still looks pretty good once you put the assets to. Now, number 2, once you throw an asset in After Effects on top of a clip, you really need to spend some time to make sure that it fits. And time is a big thing, how fast that asset moves in relation to your footage, the color correction of that asset to make sure that it fits the scene, and then how that asset interacts. Does it need to cast a shadow? Does it need to be blocked from something in the foreground if it was really there? Things like that is what is really gonna take a VFX concept that you're working on and bring it to life and make it look really, really good, guys. So with those things in mind, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and learned something. Make sure to check the Creatrix store and subscribe if you haven't for what comes next. 2018 is gonna be an awesome year for us, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, stay awesome.